that we'll be talking about today, Earthkeeper Reflections on the American Land. It's a blend of story and, quote, blood memory, and forms something of a spiritual autobiography for Moma Day, whose work is deeply rooted in the soil and spirit of the Southwest. When I think about my life and the lives of my ancestors, he writes, I am inevitably led to the conviction that I and they belong to the American land. This is a declaration of belonging. It's a really wonderful collection. It's got a spirit behind it of something like American Zen, except for the fact that it is very much of this landscape. He speaks of the dragonfly who, quote, raised his arms and began to pray. His voice seemed to reach beyond itself, a long way on the land. And he prayed the sun up. The grasses glistened with dew, and a bird sang from the dawn. This happened a long time ago. I was not there. My father was there when he was a boy. He told me of it, and I was there. The pages offer entries in this delightful and deeply wise spiritual biography. And in another entry, he writes, we humans must revere the earth, for it is our well-being. Always the earth grants us what we need. If we treat the earth with kindness, it will treat us kindly. If we give our belief to the earth, it will believe in us. There is no better blessing than to be believed in. There are those who believe that the earth is dead. They are deceived. The earth is alive and it is possessed. Before I formally welcome Mr. Moma Day and his co-conversant Anderson Tepper, I just want to let you know that in this spirit of Earth Keepers, we have a few things that might interest you. And you can follow us at BPL Presents on social media. Michael Mann, the climatologist, will be in conversation about his new book, The New Climate War, with Sasha Sagan on February 17th. Naomi Klein will join members of the Sunrise Movement to discuss her youth book, How to Change Everything, on February 21st. And our Climate Reads book discussion club continues with the One Straw Revolution, hosted by the journalist Amanda Little on February 23rd. But we're also doing an array of programs around Black History Month. And as I say, you can find us on social media at BPL Presents. Now, our co-conversant today, Anderson Tepper, is co-chair of the International Committee of the Brooklyn Book Festival, and he has served on the advisory committee of the Penn World Voices Festival of International Literature, has written on books and writers for a variety of publications, including the New York Times Book Review, the New Yorker, Airmail, and Words Without Borders. Please welcome our guests of honor, Anderson Tepper, and of course, and Scott Moma Day. Welcome.
Thank you, Joel. Thank you, Brooklyn Library, and welcome everyone to this Saturday event. And Scott Moma Day, it's such a pleasure and honor. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
I was just mentioning that I've had your books for many, many years, and they really made an enormous impact. I remember reading them, rereading them, dog-earing them, especially House Made of Dawn. What wonderful works.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I'm honored and a bit awed. But I first wanted to welcome you and ask you, where are you joining us from, and what does it look like, the landscape outside your window right now?
I'm in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and the weather is holding nicely. It's sunny, but we're expecting snow tonight. So it's a wonderful landscape, by the way. We've got the Sangre de Cristo Mountains in view, and a beautiful place.
Well, I'm going to ask you about Earthkeeper, your latest book, as well as a recent collection of poetry, The Death of Sitting Bear, and the reissue of House Made of Dawn, the 50th anniversary edition that came out, I believe, last year. But I want to begin with a short quote. I want to kind of frame our conversation on with two passages. So this is from Earthkeeper, and you write, I am an elder and I keep the earth. When I was a boy, I first became aware of the beautiful world in which I lived. It was a world of rich colors, red canyons and blue mesas, green fields and yellow ochre sands, silver clouds and mountains that changed from black to charcoal to purple and iron. It was a world of great distances. The sky was so deep that it had no end, and the air was run through with sparkling light. It was a world in which I was wholly alive. I knew even then that it was mine and that I would keep it forever in my heart. It was essential to my being. And you go on. Well, my question is, this book is a very personal account. You call it a form of spiritual autobiography. So tell me why you chose to write this book now and what form it took.
It's a collection of brief essays, in length for the most part. And I wrote it because I'm concerned for the safety of the earth. We are, it's hard to, perhaps hard to get past the pandemic. But I think the next very crucial threat to our well-being is global warming. And so I had that in mind when I wrote this book. I'm anxious to do what I can to preserve the earth.
Mm. And tell us about the concept of the Earth Keepers and who they are, or who we are, and how we can maintain this reverence for the earth, its wonder, and its life.
I think we all ought to be earth keepers.
Right.
Earth keeper is someone is in my mind who looks after the well-being of the earth, protects it, refrains from doing damage to it, and preserves it in the best sense.
Mm. Joel mentioned this character Dragonfly. Tell us more about Dragonfly. He's a healer and a storyteller, and of course an earth keeper. He's an ancestor from a different time.
Yes, he's a holy man who lived before my generation. He belonged to the generation of my grandparents. But Dragonfly was a man who lived at Rainy Mountain, which is a kind of sacred place on the Kiowa, in the Kiowa landscape. And he would come and visit my grandparents. He would come on horseback, and he, in the proper way of a Kiowa visit, would stay for days. And so my father, as a young boy, got to know him and told me stories about him.
Mm.
He stands in my mind as
Yeah.
a holy man who represents the best traditions of earth keeping among the Kiowas.
There's also a woman you describe traveling in a covered wagon in a wedding dress, with a wedding dress. Who is this woman?
Well, she's someone I don't know. I was told about her by someone who was perhaps her great granddaughter, but she came west in a covered wagon, and she brought her possessions, her most prized possessions, with her. And the most cherished of these was her wedding dress. And it was not the dress in which she had been married, but the dress in which she would be married. And so she became part of the Western landscape, which must have mystified her and caused great wonder in her soul. But I think she became a part of it. And I want to think that, yes, she did eventually wear that wedding dress, and she made a home for herself in the West.
As Joel read, you say this is a declaration of belonging, this book. It's a story of belonging. Tell me more about this idea of belonging, how you arrived at this idea, and what is the specific landscape, patch of land that you feel so bonded to?
Well, I grew up in the Southwest, which is a magnificent landscape of colors and all kinds of animals and growth. And it occurred to me at a certain point that, yes, I do belong to the land. I belong to it. It belongs to me. So it is a testament of belonging, going both ways.
In one section you write, ours is a damaged world. We humans have done the damage and we must be held to account. We have suffered a poverty of imagination. We've lost a sense of wonder, you say. So the earth crisis is a crisis of imagination as well. And you also say it's a moral crisis about our very humanity.
I believe that. I believe that our attitude towards the land is a moral consideration. We're talking about morality, the way in which we can best account for ourselves, give an account for ourselves in terms of goodness and loyalty to the landscape in which we live, and I think it is up to everyone to appreciate the landscape and to do what he can to preserve it. We are in danger of losing it by abusing it. We wound the earth in many different ways. We do not have a proper regard for it. It's not something that we revere. And reverence is a real part of this moral consideration of the landscape.
There's a wonderful passage where you say the earth is a house of stories. So how did you, for this book, decide to blend? How did you mix your personal stories and anecdotes with ancestral stories, part of your collective blood memory?
Well, you know, the American Indian has a very rich oral tradition. Hasn't writing, but has instead a tradition of storytelling. And my father, who was a full-blood Kiowa, told me stories when I was very young. And these were stories that had been passed down to him for generations untold. We don't know how old some of them are. They're very old. And I fell in love with them. And I made him tell them to me again and again until they were secure in my mind. And so I developed a real appreciation for the oral traditions, the tradition of storytelling. And I wanted to get that tradition into Earthkeeper especially.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about your poetic voice. You've said that before that you are a poet first, and poetry is your first instinct as a writer. Poems, you say, give life to my mind.
Yes, that's true. And I should say that there is no such thing as poetry in the oral tradition of the Indian, but it is poetic. His storytelling is charged with melody and all kinds of poetic elements. So I inherited that from my father, but I also, when I was an adult, I was awarded a fellowship in creative writing from Stanford, and I went there and I studied poetry for 4 years. So I got a very good kind of background in English formal poetry, and I incorporate that in my work. You mentioned The Death of Sitting Bear.
Yeah.
It's a collection of about 200 poems. Many of them are anchored in the English tradition of poetry, and others are come out of my sense of the oral tradition. So it's a blending. I make use of both traditions.
I wanted to ask you about The Death of Sitting Bear. Tell me the scope of the span of the years of these poems, and has your poetic voice changed over the years? And what forms are you using? What poetic forms are you using?
A good many of the poems in the book are English forms. You know, iambic pentameter, for example. I enlist that meter in many of my poems. Others are, you know, I write sonnets, and I'm acutely aware of English prosody, so I incorporate that in many of the poems. Others are storytelling poems. They're poems based in the Native American oral tradition. The scope of that book, I'm not sure how. I suppose they go back to, say, the 1960s, the earliest poems in the book, and they come up to the present time.
There's also a recent anthology that's come out that Joy Harjo edited, and you wrote a blessing that opens this anthology of Native nations poetry called "When the Light of the World Was Subdued, Our Songs Came Through." Tell me about that anthology and the significance of it. It's a very expansive collection.
Yes, and I think it's quite new.
Yeah,
and so I must confess I haven't yet seen it.
Yeah, I think it's just.
I do know that I had the poem that is used as a kind of preface to it. I think it's called the Prayer for Words, and that's a poem or an oral formula that is based on native oral tradition.
Mm,
But it does express my view of the sacredness of the word.
mm. In The Earthkeeper, you write that a poet and teacher once told you, write little and write well. This is a very slim book, but full and resonant. Was that one of the guiding principles of this work?
I think so. Yeah, I took that advice to heart. It was given to me by a professor and indeed my dissertation advisor at Stanford. It was a brilliant critic in his own right, and his advice was write little and write well. So I've tried to keep to that.
So I wanted to ask you about Housemaid of Dawn. So the 50th anniversary edition, it won the Pulitzer in 1969, and the new edition just came out. And speaking of poetry, so you were primarily a poet when you wrote this, and this was your first attempt at a novel. What were the challenges in writing the novel?
Well, I had not written a novel. This is my first novel.
Right.
So I had to learn as I went along. I had been 4 years at Stanford studying poetry, and I had backed myself into a corner, as it were. I wanted more elbow room, and so I turned to the novel. And I worked it out over a period of 2 or 3 years, but it was a new experience for me, and I was delighted with the success that it achieved. My first novel wins an important prize, and so I was greatly encouraged by that. And I think it's meant a lot to me in my career.
And you actually wrote it on the East Coast, right? In a completely different landscape, a wintry, snowy landscape.
Well, I wrote it all over the place. I
Yeah,
started
yeah.
it in New Mexico,
Okay,
and it is set in New Mexico.
of course.
So I started it in New Mexico and ended up, I think, writing the very end of it in Amherst, Massachusetts, where I was on a fellowship for a year.
Mm-hmm. And you've said that you tend not to reread your fiction, but did you reread Housemaid of Dawn for the new edition, and were there any special thoughts that occurred to you looking back at it?
No, I didn't reread it.
You didn't.
I let it stand as it was. I have on occasion been asked questions,
Yeah.
that leads me to going back and looking at parts of it. But I haven't read it through since it was published the first time, I think.
And the book that came after that, was that The Way to Rainy Mountain?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Published very quickly, very soon after Housemaid of Dawn. And The Way to Rainy Mountain is a collection of Kiowa folk tales.
Right.
It's a representation of the Kiowa oral tradition.
Mm-hmm. So for Housemaid of Dawn, the novel, what were your models, or what were you trying to create? Were you trying to create a new sort of novel that didn't exist, of contemporary Native American experience?
I suppose I was trying to do that, but let me say that I lived for a number of years, my most impressionable years, from the age of about 12 to 17. I lived on the Jemez Pueblo Reservation in New Mexico. And I saw it was a time of critical importance to the native world, because it was a time when young men were returning from the Second World War.
Right.
And so I knew a number of these men, and they impressed me because they were trying desperately to fit themselves back into the traditional world, but they had been uprooted from it. And so it was a real struggle for them. And I thought, when the time came and I wanted to write something, I thought, well, this is a good subject. And so I wrote about a young Pueblo man who returns from the war and tries to resume his former way of life and has a terrible struggle doing it.
Yeah, I think you say that that he was at a loss. Yeah, he had lost his place.
Yes, he'd lost his place he's lost his place psychically and physically.
Mm-hmm. I know there was talk of a Native American renaissance of writing at that time, but were there other novels, or was it mainly nonfiction that followed your book? I know there were books like Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee, Black Elk Speaks, and other writers. But was there's a movement, and tell me more.
I think a movement was starting about the time I
Yeah.
published House Made of Dawn, and that book and Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee were
Right.
both important works in bringing about a new appreciation of Native American writing. So a good deal followed upon that publication of those two books, and it continues. A good many young Native people are writing important works now.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about current writers because there does seem to be quite a few novels and stories and poetry. And I know in the Times recently there was an article on science fiction writing and fantasy and horror genres by Native American writers.
Yeah, I'm
Did
aware
you-
of that, but
Yeah.
that's interesting and important. And yes, I have known a good many young writers who I've tried to encourage and who have been prominent and gained a good deal of acclaim with their writing. I'm currently conducting some interviews with Layli Long Soldier, who is a Lakota Indian and important writer. We will be hearing from her and from others. Joy Harjo is an old friend, and she's been a very important voice in Native American writing.
And what about, do you feel that recent political movements have affected in Native American culture, like the protests at Standing Rock, or even the election results, the actions of Native American in Arizona and New Mexico, that they've had an impact and have influenced the culture?
Yes, definitely so. These movements have been extremely important, I think. I was in on one of the early ones. There was a takeover at Alcatraz, and I was living in the Bay Area at that time, and I went out to the island and saw for myself what was happening. And that demonstration caused it drew a lot of attention from the people in the Bay Area of all races and so on. So it was an important statement politically. Standing Rock demonstration recently has been also very important. So the protests of that kind, I think, serve a real purpose, and they're important.
And the recent social justice movements like Black Lives Matters, that have they helped wake up the publishing world to Native American and Indigenous writing around the world, in Australia, Canada, South America?
I'm sure they have. Yes,
Yeah.
yes. I think that kind of protest, that kind of political voice is important to all minorities. It gives them will and strength and resolve, and that's very important. They need that.
And what are you concentrating more on, writing or the painting and the artwork, or both together? I mean, this book, you have your artwork in it as well.
Yeah. I try to strike a balance between writing and painting, and I think the heavier side really is writing. I need both things in my life. I find that writing is very difficult in the sense that it demands a great concentration. So when I'm writing, I can do very little else. It's not so with painting. I can listen to a ball game while I'm painting. It doesn't require quite the same degree of concentration, but they're both important to me.
I just want to remind people that they can put questions in the chat, and we'll take some questions. And Scott, did you want to read a poem or a passage, or would you prefer I read, or?
I can do either thing, but I would prefer, because my eyesight is not very good, to have you read.
Okay, I wanted to read a couple other passages and just get your reactions. Page 3. One of the themes in to go back to Earthkeeper really is this eternal connection to the land, and in fact mortality, and you talk about the far camps. May my heart hold the earth all the days of my life, and when I'm gone to the farther camps, may my name sound on the green hills, and may the cedar smoke that I have breathed drift on the canyon walls and among the branches of living trees. May birds of many colors encircle the soil where my steps have been placed, and may the deer, the lion, and the bear of the mountains be touched by the blessings that have touched me. May I chant the praises of the wild land, and may my spirit range on the wind forever.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for reading that. Yeah. I'm glad to have written that.
Yeah. And then kind of to bookend the conversation, at the end, the narrator, let's see, returns. I returned to the towering rock tree on a vision quest. For 4 days, I fast and sleep in the small tent that I brought for shelter. On the night of the 4th day, my secret vision comes to me, and I am the warrior I was meant to be. The rock tree looms on the night sky, and the Big Dipper rides above it. The stars are again my 7 sisters, and I am again the boy who turned into a bear. I am Soy Tali,
rock tree boy.
rock tree boy.
Uh-huh.
And I will carry that name to the end of the world and beyond. I will keep to the trees and waters, and I will be the singing of the soil. In my truest being, I am keeper of the earth. I will tell the ancient stories, and I will sing the holy songs. I belong to the land.
Yes, the rock tree is
Yes.
Is called Devil's Tower. It's a
Uh-huh.
feature in the landscape in Wyoming, and it's sacred to the Kiowas because in their migration from the north, they lived in the Black Hills for a time, and they discovered Devil's Tower. And they told a story about it, and the story involves a boy who turns into a bear, and of his sisters who become the stars of the Big Dipper. And so when the time came, I made a vision quest. I camped out and stayed there for 4 days fasting, and finally had a vision that was important to me. And but it was a sacred experience, and one that I am glad I made. And so I wrote about that in the passage you read, and that's the background for it. It's an important place for me.
And
My
when
name comes from it.
And
rock
when was
tree.
that? When was that spirit quest?
Oh, it was maybe 20 years ago, something
Okay.
like that. It was after I had become an adult,
Uh-huh.
and so I wanted to have a vision quest, and so that was the best place I could think of to make it.
Mm. And did you write about that before, or did that kind of percolate and say for this work?
I think the passage you just read was the culmination of that experience. I probably have have referred to it in other places and other writings, but what you just read is what I would like to preserve as my statement concerning the importance of the rock tree and the vision quest and the bear story and so on.
Mm. Somebody asks, what were the titles of those poems, please? These are passages coming from the Earthkeeper. They're little sections or chapters.
Yeah.
Yeah, little vignettes.
Yes.
And they're each about a page long or shorter.
Yes.
There is some poetry included, yeah.
So
they're, yeah, so they're from the Earthkeeper.
Yes. which is an interesting combination to me of oral tradition, poetry, and creative writing.
Well, I want to ask, read some of the questions here. Can you speak a bit more about your experience at Alcatraz, the leadership of Richard Oakes and the Red Power movement?
I knew a number of people who were connected to that movement, and they were friends of mine and people I talked to about, the situation. And I went to Alcatraz on one occasion, and it was incredibly rough water out there. It was a scary experience just getting to the rock and then mounting it. But it was cold, and there were a great number of Indians there, and they seemed to be quite unified, and they were making, I thought, an important statement about their condition, the condition of the Native American at that time. And so I was glad I went. I was glad to have a part of it. I wish I'd had a greater part, but I wasn't able to stay there. And so it was a fairly quick trip out and back. And what I remember most vividly about it was the rough water in the day and the cold. It was cold when I went there. And the genuine hospitality of the Indians is an impressive thing.
Yeah, I know it was featured on the PBS documentary on your life that aired a few years ago, American Masters. But what year was it? Did it come after the Wounded Knee protests, the AIM protests, or?
I don't remember exactly the year, but it was about the same time, I think.
Yeah.
Maybe after.
Yeah. So there's some questions on the Q&A function as well as the chat. So let me look. Here's a question. Can you tell about Earthkeeper? Can you tell us more about the format of Earthkeeper? Does it have a plot laid out in prose as well as poetry?
I don't think of it as having a plot necessarily. Yeah. It's a collection of stories, and all of them have to do with the earth and the keeping of the earth, the reverence that we ought to have for the earth, and that's really the organizing principle of the book.
One of our audience members would like to know more about the pottery, the beautiful pottery in the room that you're speaking from. Is it from the Jemez Pueblo?
The pottery behind me is, I think, Acoma. The large bowl is Acoma. I'm not sure what other pottery is in view, but anyway, I have a fairly good collection of pottery. My parents had a wonderful collection, so I have some of that, and it comes from all of the different pueblos, really. I live at Jemez for a critical period of my life, as I told you, and of course, I have a number of Jemez pottery, a number of bowls, pottery bowls from Jemez. But pottery is a very important kind of art form in this part of the world, as you know. It's, my daughter's dog is trying to horn in on the conversation here.
Someone asked, what are some of the books and authors you enjoyed when you were a young man?
Quite a variety of books. My mother, who was a writer, had always a wonderful store of books in the house, and she would read to me from them, and I was encouraged to read for myself. And so I read all kinds of different things. I think I enjoyed most stories about cowboys and Indians. Growing up in New Mexico, as I did, I got to know a good deal about Billy the Kid when I was growing up, and he became a kind of imaginary friend of mine, and we rode the range together. And so I've written a number of things about him. I have a collection in one of my books. I think it's in the presence of the sun. It's called The Strange and True Story of My Life with Billy the Kid. And I got to, be a kind of authority on him. I've lost a lot of that knowledge, but I used to know a great deal about his life, and he interested me a great deal. He was, we think of him as an outlaw and a bloodthirsty killer, but I think he wasn't really that. He was a boy who was looking for a home, and he got in trouble, went on the wrong side of the law, and paid the consequences. But his escape from the Lincoln County Courthouse is probably the greatest escape in the history of the West.
Yeah, there's Michael Ondaatje wrote a great book, the Collected Works of Billy the Kid.
That's right. Yes,
I remember reading that.
Yeah. I read that too, along with everything else I could find on Billy the Kid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you written on Billy the Kid?
Have I written?
Yeah.
Well, the piece I mentioned, The Strange and True Story of My Life with Billy the Kid, is a collection of 21 very short pieces, mostly poetry. So I wrote that, and I've referred to him in other writings. In my second novel, which is called The Ancient Child, Billy the Kid is a major figure in that book too.
So I'm jumping between the Q&A and the chat function, and let's see. Do you have thoughts on how we can carry your work forward and reconnect people to the land when so much reality, quote, is virtual and digital? Can Americans be open to this experience?
I'm not sure I understand that question. Could you repeat it or paraphrase it?
Thoughts on how we can carry your work forward and reconnect people to the land? I think when people are so connected to virtual and digital reality.
I think the book is there, and one of the ways to connect it to our understanding of the earth and its importance to us, you read the book, and either you see what I'm trying to say in it or you don't. But I think most people would be sympathetic to my view towards the land, and so we can connect the book to our future understanding of the land and to the crisis of global warming and so on by reading it.
I'd love to know what you're reading now and what is currently inspiring you.
I'm not reading anything at the moment. I read snippets, and my eyesight is poor, so that I have a hard time reading. I don't deal with fine print very well at all now, and so my reading is restricted. But I like, Jean Le Carré died very recently, and he was an important figure in my life. I read most of him when I was on a trek in Greenland, and I enjoyed sitting up on the edge of the glacier and reading Jean Le Carré, and I got to know him very well and respected his writing very much. I think he's one of the great writers of spy material in our time. I enjoy reading that kind of book, thrillers, spy writings. Sort of as I do enjoy looking at movies about spies and so on. Yeah, so I try to keep a steady diet of that in my life.
Someone in the audience mentions that you worked on a film version of the Return to Rainy Mountain. Is that right? Is there a movie version?
That's my daughter.
Tell me.
The daughter who was here, and she has a movie called The Return to Rainy Mountain, which is a wonderful movie. She's very promising as a filmmaker, and I'm sure she'll continue in that vein. But that movie is quite impressive, I think.
Can you tell us more about the film? Does it take from your work, or is it something different?
Yeah, I guess I'm a principal character in the film, and she films the migration route of the Kiowas from the far north, well, from what is now western Montana to the southern plains. And so she has wonderful landscapes in it, and she talks about the importance of this feature in the landscape and that. And she ends up by talking about the homestead where my grandparents lived. And it's wonderfully evocative of the life on the southern plains at the turn of the century and later, the turn of the 20th century.
Mm.
It's beautiful. It's a beautiful film.
It's on PBS.
It's on PBS, she says.
Okay.
Yes. Yes, and it's been shown widely and will continue to be shown. It's always in a number of festivals, and it's just wonderful work.
Okay, so here's a question from Diane from Puerto Rico. An old fan of your work, especially The Ancient Child, a stunning, hauntingly beautiful novel. Can you comment on how you came upon the telling of Set's story, a painter turned medicine man and keeper of the earth? Were there biographical elements?
I can talk a little about it because I'm probably the greatest authority on it. It's about a man who is a painter, and he's also a Native American, and he has the same kind of difficulty that Abel has in Housemaid of Dawn, trying to refit himself, reestablish himself in the traditional world. And he's rather successful at it. He's a successful painter, and at the end of the book, he himself turns into a bear. So I pick up that theme again, and it's that this is his spiritual life. He's the life of a bear, and he returns to it at the end of the book. So it's evocative, I think, of the native spirit and the reverence for the land and the importance of animals in the Native American world and so on. And so thank you for that question. That's yeah, it's a good one.
I wanted to read another passage that opens The Earth Keeper. It's from The Way to Rainy Mountain, and it's always stuck with me. Once in his life, a man ought to concentrate his mind upon the remembered earth, I believe. He ought to give himself up to a particular landscape in his experience, to look at it from as many angles as he can, to wonder about it, to dwell upon it. He ought to imagine that he touches it with his hands at every season and listens to the sounds that are made upon it. He ought to imagine the creatures there and all the faintest motions of the wind. He ought to recollect the glare of noon and all the colors of the dawn and dusk.
Yes, that's a passage that I wrote some years ago, but it is the center of my interest in the reverence for the land. It is a kind of summation of everything that is contained, for example, in Earthkeeper. It expresses the attitude towards the land that I think is so important. And
there's always this rich description of the colors of the land in your work.
Which is very important to me. I write a good deal about landscapes, and you can't find a richer landscape than the Indian country, you know, where you have such wonderful colors of canyons and skies and mountains and deserts and so on. So that I think that appeals to me as a visual artist as well as a writer.
And Housemaid of Dawn actually opens with the lines, "There was a house made of dawn. It was made of pollen and of rain, and the land was very old and everlasting. There were many colors on the hills, and the plain was bright with different colored clays and sands. Red and blue and spotted horses grazed in the plain, and there was a dark wilderness on the mountains beyond. The land was still and strong. It was beautiful all around."
Yeah, that's a passage that is important to me and indicates my interest in visual power of the landscape, and it's
It's a
beautiful.
very evocative title, of course, Housemaid of Dawn, and it comes from a prayer.
Comes from a Navajo,
Uh-huh.
the prayer of the night chant, and it's a beautiful, beautiful prayer. It's translated by Washington Matthews, among other people, I suppose, but his is the first translation. It's very beautiful, and I incorporate that in the Housemaid of Dawn, the prayer itself,
Right.
and it's something that I have lived with for a long time and appreciated greatly.
Mm. And the Earth Keeper is actually broken into two sections, dawn and dusk.
Yes.
Mm.
Yeah, because those are two of the principal times
Mhm.
of the vitality of the landscape for me.
Yeah.
The dawn, you can't beat dawn on the desert. Say
Mm.
it's a wonderful freshness of the land and the vitality of the landscape, and
Mm.
you have to revere it when you experience the dawn.
Mhm.
And the dusk is the same thing.
Mhm.
The sun sets and it becomes a fire in the west, and it's just sometimes breathtaking. So those two times of the day are very important to me.
Mm. Well, dusk is coming soon here in snowy Connecticut.
Okay, I believe you. I lived in Massachusetts for a time, so I know about that.
And one of our audience members, Sonia, is curious about your experiences as a professor in academia. What did you teach, and where did you teach, and how did it contribute to your work?
Well, it was very important to me because that was my fundamental career for many years. I did my graduate work at Stanford, and when I graduated there, my first teaching post was at the University of California, Santa Barbara, and so I have taught there, and I went from there to Berkeley, taught there, and I returned to Stanford on the faculty for 20 years. And I have been a visiting professor in a number of different places, including Moscow. I was there behind the Iron Curtain during the early 70s. And that was a very important time in my life. But it means a great deal to me because I was able to delve into subjects that interested me. I taught oral tradition year after year after year.
Mm-hmm.
Became a kind that became my most important course, and so I have become familiar with the oral tradition, the Native American oral tradition by and large, and so I've had a lot of experience teaching it, and I've enjoyed that experience very much.
Yeah, there's a question actually on that subject. Is there a form of Native American literary criticism? Does that exist? And should there be an indigenous way of interpreting Native literatures as opposed to the typical European ways of theorizing literature?
Well, the thing is, we don't have a written tradition in the Native American world, so we don't have criticism in the sense we usually think of.
Mm-hmm.
Great many non-Indian people who are interested in Native American literature have given us a kind of criticism of certain texts, but these are texts that have been transcribed. They're not original texts, so criticism as such is not a critical part of that world. So we impose it upon Native oral tradition, but it's a different kind of thing than criticizing literature as such. Good question, though.
Yeah, excellent. Well, I'll just read a few more questions if you're still game and
Absolutely, please.
Thank you so much for this, and thank you for taking the time. And we've been really anticipating this for a while.
Well, it's my pleasure. I'm delighted. And to have an audience in the East while I'm in the West is an interesting experience for me.
Yeah, and I know the library showed the film in the, I think, as part of their series, uh,
Lit
the
film.
American Master. What's that, Joel?
The lit film series,
Right.
we played the PBS film. It was wonderful and it was very well received. And we spoke to the director about you, Scott, and about the film.
Yeah.
You do something then?
Well, I think maybe you'll have to do the Rainy Mountain film next. His
I
daughter's
think
film.
so. Yeah.
Yes, please.
Okay. You hear that, Joel?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Susan asks, can you talk more about the notion of failure of imagination as it relates to nature?
Well, the imagination is something that interests me very much. How do you define it?
Mhm.
I think of the imagination as that which enables us to see beyond reality. You know, we see the mountain and it's real, but we imagine the valley on the other side, which is not to be seen, but it is to be imagined. It is something that takes place in the mind, and that the imagination is what has sparked literary genius for as long as we know, and painting in the same way. The imagination is essential to art. And so I think of it as something very crucial in our lives. And there are those who specialize in the study of the imagination, the structure of the imagination. I'm not sure what that means, but I believe that there is such a thing. And so I'm interested in that, and I incorporate the imagination in virtually all of the creative activity that I make.
Jade asks, do you feel that your relationship to the earth has strengthened over time? And how has it influenced your writing? It's been there from the beginning, hasn't it?
It's been there from the beginning, but I do think it has been strengthened over time. I took it for granted the way most of us do for the early part of my life. And then I began to think about it as something that must not be taken for granted. You know, it can be lost and we can destroy it. We have that capacity. So we have to be very careful of how we deal with the earth. It is sacred. It is a spiritual. It has a spiritual ingredient that is perhaps the most important part of it. So we need to be aware of that, and we need to attend to it and react to it on that basis. You know, we can look at the landscape, but unless we understand the vitality, the spiritual vitality of it, it's lost upon us, and we must not allow it to be lost.
Carlos says, right, so many of us no longer live where our roots are. How can itinerant people reroute themselves, even to places where we spend little time? And that kind of reminds me of the passage in the book where there's a friend of yours who lives in Brooklyn, in fact, whose kid is surprised to find soil and earth beneath the sidewalks.
Right. Well, the answer to that question, I think, is that we certainly owe a great debt of reverence to the place from which we come, our original landscape, our country, our place in the world. But that's not it's not essential to us, to our understanding of the earth and the reverence for it. We can go like the woman who carries her wedding dress across the plains. We can relocate ourselves in a landscape and take hold of it and let it grow within us and appreciate it. It becomes vital to us, and we understand the spiritual significance of it. We can do that. I've had that experience by traveling. I've traveled widely in the world in my time, and I have taken hold of certain landscapes. And I spent a lot of time in the Arctic, for example, and I developed a real appreciation for that cold, icy landscape. You know, there's something to it. It has a spirit. And the people who live in it are very, very strongly and spiritually connected to it. They're whale hunters, and they have an appreciation for that part of the world, which is we sometimes think of as hostile or inhospitable. But it isn't. It isn't. Once you get into it and you live in it for a time, you begin to understand the strength of it and the beauty of it, and that becomes very important to one's life.
Are you optimistic in any way? Is optimism intrinsic to your vision of the earth?
Yes, I am optimistic. I think there's great reason to be dubious about the future of the earth. If we continue in the direction we're going, there's great danger in that, because we have for a long time been concerned to rape the earth and to extract wealth from it. It's greed has become very important, a strong and dubious part of our relationship to the earth. But I think there is time to change our attitudes towards the earth. The closer we come to destruction of the earth as we know it, the more aware I think we become of ways in which to save it. So I'm optimistic on that basis. I think we have time to return the world to its pristine and beautiful and useful and spiritual being, and we had better be about that.
Maybe time for one more question, I think, and let's see. Well, someone is asking, do you have a favorite piece of your own work over the years? And someone else was asking, what is the main idea you want people to take away from your work? Or is there?
Well, to take the first part of the question, I think the favorite of my books, is The Way to Rainy Mountain, which is a collection of Kiowa folktales. And I like it because it's not my voice so much as it's the voice of my ancestors. And that tradition, that oral tradition, is very rich. And so I was very pleased to be able to transcribe those stories, which were told to me by my kinsman, my father in particular. So that book means a lot to me. The introduction to that book is one of the best things that I think I've ever written.
Is that right?
I think so.
The prologue.
The introduction. The introduction.
Yes, the introduction. Yes.
Yeah.
A single knoll rises out of the plain in Oklahoma, north and west of the Wichita Range.
Yes.
My people, the Kiowas, it was an old landmark, and they gave it the name Rainy Mountain. The hardest weather in the world is there. Is that right?
That's right.
So this is the landscape of Oklahoma, which was your early years.
Yeah, the Southern Plains, that landscape.
Yeah.
Which is very strong, very powerful. And to the Kiowas, of course, it meant it was sort of the end of it was the destination of their pilgrimage, their migration from the north. They started maybe in Siberia, but they came across and in 700-800 years ago, they were in western Montana near the headwaters of the Yellowstone River, and for some reason they began to follow the sun southward, and came upon the Southern Plains, which became their headquarters. my father's illustration.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. And
Yeah.
when you were working on the book, he did the illustrations for the book.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was a
Collaborated.
collaboration and a good collaboration, I dedicated it to my parents, so it means a lot to me on that basis too.
That's interesting that you said the introduction was the best writing you've done.
I think, if I had to pick out one part of my writing that I considered worthy of my best efforts, I think I might choose the introduction to The Way to Rainy Mountain.
And the second part of that question from another person was, is there one all-encompassing idea or thought that you want to take readers to take from your work?
Well, I think of the world and the earth in particular as powerful and beautiful, and I would like my readers to share that view of their world. So I write about, when I can, I write about the beauty and the importance and the spiritual value of the landscape and the earth on which we live. And that probably the one thing I'd like my readers to take with them.
And are you working on poetry now or another prose work?
You know what I'm doing now? I'm writing a book which is tentatively entitled In the Path of the Sun. And I'm writing about the migration of the Kiowas. And then I take it into the calendars. The Kiowas and the Lakotas were calendar keepers. And so the first part has to do with the migration itself, the traveling after the sun's, traveling after the sun, the search for the sun. The second part has to do with the calendars of the Kiowas, which are fascinating. And then the third part is autobiographical. It's another kind of spiritual autobiography. So it's a varied kind of book I have in mind, but I'm working on that.
It sounds wonderful. And will you be doing drawings as well for it?
I think so. Probably black and white. I like black and white drawings, and so I'll probably do some of that for the book.
Well, dusk is coming. Has the snow started in New Mexico?
No, but it's coming.
I think we're getting snow.
We can rely on our weather forecasters for that.
It must be beautiful when it's covered in white snow.
Yes, it is. As most of the earth is beautiful when it's covered in snow. Yes, I remember being in New England. When it started snowing, I think in October, and didn't stop until May. I enjoyed that.
Well, what about Siberia or your trips to Russia?
Yeah, a lot of snow. I was mostly in western Siberia, where it's very marshy, and so less snow there than in the other side of the country, but it's cold. It's cold. I once went to. I took the Trans-Siberian Railroad, in which I traveled across the width of Siberia, which is I think it was 9 time zones or something. Wonderful excursion.
And some of the poems in Death of Sitting Bear are inspired by your experiences there.
Yes,
right.
Yes, right.
And where did you spend a year? Did you spend a year teaching in Moscow, or did I get that wrong?
I spent one semester there in 1974. I was there from January until June.
What an experience!
It really was. It was something I wouldn't trade for anything. It was not comfortable, but it was fascinating. And I got to travel into Central Asia on that trip as well, and that was also fascinating.
And were you meeting poets? Russian poets?
I met a good many writers, yes.
Yeah.
And I lectured at various universities across the way. was a great time.
And were they reading translations of House Made of Dawn? Or maybe not, no?
Let's see. I don't recall that they were reading translations of
Okay.
House.
Yeah, maybe not.
I was lecturing to them in American literature, so I
Yeah.
was covering
Uh-huh.
20th century, and it was fascinating. They were all doing their dissertations in English,
Uh-huh.
so I didn't have to learn Russian in order to lecture to them, thank goodness. But it was a great experience, and they were very bright people.
Uh-huh. Well, thank you. I think the audience had a great time with these questions, with the chats and the Q&A. So thank you in the audience, and thank you for coming. And Joel, thank you for the library, to the library.
Yeah.
Jump
thank
in,
you.
Joel, if you wanted to ask.
Absolutely. Andy, thanks for your questions. Dr. Momode, it's great to finally get you. I know we tried to bring you for your last book and we tried to bring you for that film. But let's make a deal that right here and right now that for the next book, pandemic allowing, we're gonna try to get you over to Brooklyn so we can shake hands in person and introduce
I
you
would
to our
love
audience.
that, Joel. Thank you.
Seems like
Andy,
there were-
thank you very much.
Oh, thank you, Scott. Thank you.
Some folks joined late, and as you see on our social, on our chat, my colleague Margie just posted the social. You can watch this video on PPL Presents Facebook page, and we also posted some upcoming programs that I mentioned in the beginning. But once again, thanks to Drs. Scott Momode and Anderson Tepper for their wonderful, warm, and storied conversation. Please know that you're always welcome. And thanks again, Andy. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you, Joel.
Right.
Stay well, Scott.